to rebrand and increase UKEC's relevance and presence in the student landscape here in the UK. Lastly, let me thank again our sponsors, my committee, distinguished speakers, VIPs, and to all of you that made a trip to Manchester from wherever from UK. I just want to come, if just feel free to come by and say hi to the community. All of us are wearing the Projek Amanat Negara t-shirts, and we appreciate the incredible feedback and encouraging feedback. And as Chairman of UKEC, I hope that you all have a great time today. Have fun, please mingle around. And Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzabannar. Assalamualaikum, and thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Shahrul. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome Associate Professor Dr. Mohad Anizu Muhammad Noor, our Director of Education Malaysia, to deliver his officiating address.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Salam satu Malaysia and a very good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Shahrul Hamdan, Chairman of UKEC 2013-2014, and all committee members, Ms. Alia Muhammad, Director of PAN 2014, officers from the Office of Malaysian High Mission in London and Education Malaysia. Not forget about all distinguished speakers, sponsors, participants, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the organizing committee for giving me this great opportunity to deliver a speech on behalf of His Excellency Dato' Ahmad Rasidi Hazizi, Malaysian High Commissioner to the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland. And I would like to send his regards and apologize for couldn't make it today because now he went back to Malaysia for attending our meeting and conference with all ambassadors and high commissioners across the globe. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have never had to travel to Manchester for Projek Amanat Negara before, and to come all the way here and see 400 young Malaysians doing the same thing for the purpose of intellectual discourse is a very encouraging sight. The fact that Malaysian future have gathered here to learn from the current leaders of our country is in various fields is a heartening idea which gives me hope for our nation's continual improvement. I understand that this year's theme is Globalising the Youth of Malaysia, which is appropriate considering that all of you are students in the UK of Ireland. And all of you are ambassadors of Malaysia here and are spreading your culture and influence beyond your borders. All of you have had a taste of globalization and adaptability. We'll encounter more in your life, so it seems only fitting that you learn about positive global change from Malaysia who have successfully achieved it or who are currently pursuing it. I would like to congratulate the UKEC on a well-planned conference which I'm sure will live it up to, if not surpass the quality of previous Projek Amanat Negara. It is not often you see so many students using their extra time to organize such a large-scale event, and I'm truly impressed by the UKEC dedication. Looking at the moment of keen and interested delegates present, I think it is safe to say that your hard work is paying off. With that note, I will end my speech with say thank you very much and wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Thank you. We would now like to call upon the UKEC Central Committee and Associate Professor Dr. Anizu to launch our new logo of UKEC.
I would like to call upon the UKEC Chairman, Sharul Hamdan.
The official commencement of Projek Amanat Negara 2014. Our first session will begin with a look into the strategy of civil society in Malaysia.
And it is now my great pleasure to welcome our first two speakers, Tan Sri Dr. Jamilah Mahmud, founder of Mercy Malaysia, and Zamir Zulkifli, CEO of Teach for Malaysia. Our first session will be moderated by Ira Azhari, a third-year law student from the University of Liverpool, who is also the editor-in-chief of Chirku.
Please give it up.
Assalamualaikum and good morning to our dignitaries, UKEC Executive Council, distinguished speakers and all members of the floor. I'm very happy to be here today. It's an honor to share the stage with our two distinguished speakers, Tan Sri Dr. Jamilah Mahmud, founder and former president of the Medical Malaysian Relief Society, Mercy Malaysia, and also the chairperson of the Teach for Malaysia's Board of Trustees. And also on my right, Mr. Zamir Zulkifli, the co-founder and managing director of Teach for Malaysia. Before we begin, I'll just read out a little background for our session today, a civil society session with its theme Global Citizenship. With the ease of information sharing, Malaysians are now exposed to communities well beyond our borders. Such access has made our lives more intertwined. For example, a natural disaster in South America may attract compassion from Kuala Lumpur dwellers. The world is constantly changing, and there is a need for Malaysians to keep up to date. Being a global citizen starts with the belief that we are part of a bigger nation, the world. Malaysians must learn to look past their differences, to not contribute based on certain preferences, but rather for a much nobler cause, progress. To believe that acts today will contribute not only to Malaysians tomorrow, but also the whole planet. The race to build a nation with a comes with a much greater responsibility to look after the ones trailing behind. To achieve the goals of Vision 2020, Malaysians need to be more present in the international arena. It is collective effort, every person counts. But how do we get Malaysians, especially the youth, to get involved? How do we debunk the myth that only the rich and powerful can make a difference? Is everybody capable of being a global citizen? This session aims to answer these questions. It addresses the definition of being a global citizen, the challenges faced by the idea, and the areas of involvement. I would like to open the session with a question for both our speakers. Why should the Malaysian youth care about global issues? After all, we are a relatively small country compared to the US and the UK, especially in terms of influence to form solutions to problems such as global warming or financial crisis and the changing planet in general. So, Dr. Jamila, let's take this question.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum and good morning, everyone. First of all, just let me thank the organizers for inviting me here, especially Harizal, who has a tracking device that manages to track me wherever I am, and actually cut short my holiday in north of Norway, found me the only seat back to be here. So thank you, Harizal. And it's a great pleasure to be here. I think that the minute I got the invitation, I really tried very hard to come because I think you are the future for our country. And your question is really important. Many people sometimes, well, I think nowadays the context of globalization is well accepted. So I think we're really, beating the drums to a song that people are already dancing to. But if I go back to the time I started Mercy Malaysia, people actually came up to me and said, why do you bother about other people who are suffering? Isn't it enough to take care of the people in our country? And until today, I am still, that question kind of like really hurts my ear because I realize how narrow people actually looked at the role that Malaysia has. Malaysia is not a small country. My own experience in looking at humanitarian crisis, whether it's natural disasters or particularly conflict. I've worked in Afghanistan, Sudan, Iraq, and so forth. The fact that I am Malaysian opened doors. In Afghanistan, at the border of Chaman, leading into Afghanistan, Nick Robertson from CNN and a whole bunch of reporters were standing at the border unable to pass. All we had to do was show our name tags, not even our passports, because we were nations. So Malaysia, to many countries in the developing world, was the epitome of a model country that could show the world it could develop. It could be also a country that is predominantly Muslim, that could show progress. And therefore, I fail to understand why we are not ambitious, in our view, as a leader for the world. And if you look at how interconnected the problems of the world are today, therefore, if you are not thinking with a global mindset, if you are not able to come out of the comfort zone of just being jago kampung, okay, then you will never be able to face the future challenges. Let me give you one simple example. Many years ago, not many years ago, several years ago, I don't know if any of you have heard of the tortilla wars. Hands up, anyone who's read economics and has heard about the tortilla wars. Okay, it was in Mexico. I know many economists in this room, you all haven't read it. So you better go back and read. Tortilla wars was in Mexico. What happened was the price of corn maize had gone up so much that to make tortilla, which is the staple diet for Mexico, was really, really hard for many poor families. And when they actually traced it, why did the price, and people came out on the streets and wanted to overthrow the government and so forth. And the reason why was because Hurricane Katrina happened, took out a lot of the cornfields, and when there was an insufficient supply of corn, most of it was used for biofuels rather than food. And therefore that led to a price crisis, food price crisis. And similarly, you've heard of the the tsunami in Japan and the Fukushima nuclear incident was followed very rapidly by the Thai floods. And that took out the car industry in Thailand and also the parts that actually make components for computers. And that led to a global rise in the price of computers. And it affected the economies not only in Japan and Thailand and Asia, but right up to Venezuela. So we do live in a globalized world. We need to have a lens that looks at globalized. Okay, beyond that, there are many things going around us. We don't have to go and look so far. Go to Myanmar, which is one of our neighbors, and you see there are terrible conflicts going on in Rakhine State. So you will say, okay, these are Rohingya being killed by people, and how does that affect us? Well, how it affects you is that the first place they want to run to is Malaysia as refugees, because it's seen as a haven. That will cause an influx of refugees to the country. That may destabilize social situations and social dynamics. And the more worrying thing is jihadis. So there are jihadis now being recruited by SMS. So I'll stop at that point, because just to drive a point that not only from economics, from a perspective of crisis, but also a perspective of social and political stability, that we need to live to be very global. And most importantly, I think in this world today, it requires new emerging leadership with a different context, not necessarily Western, and I think Malaysia is well placed to play that role.
Thank you, Tan Sri Jim or Dr. Jim. I always get a bit nervous referring to her because she says friends call her Dr. Jim, but then we're in a formal setting, so they go Tan Sri this time. Alright, good morning everyone, and I just want to get you guys to reflect that it's 400 of you are gathered here on a cloudy Sunday morning in Manchester. So I just want you guys to give a round of applause for you guys for making it out. I have a bit of a confession because I never made it to any of these conferences when I was studying for 4 years in Imperial College. So I guess you guys are way ahead of me already when it comes to making a change or being a global citizen. I was a bit of a late bloomer. Building on Dr. Jim's point about how Malaysia is seen as a role model, I'm going to give an example from Teach Malaysia's perspective. Everyone knows education is a big challenge. Teach for Malaysia is part of a global movement of 32 partners around the world that are recruiting their best, training them and placing them as full-time teachers in some of the most underprivileged schools to make a difference and to show that change is possible. Now, new partners come on board all the time, and a partner recently approached me in a conference in China. He's starting up the project in Qatar, and he just said, Zamir, I've heard so much about you. I've been getting all your materials from Teach Malaysia. Your team is very relevant, and the context of what you're developing is very relevant. So a small country like Malaysia, Teach Malaysia as well, we only have about 200 staff and fellows, compared to the UK, which has about close to 4,000. US has close to 30,000 participants or staff in the Teach for America program. Teach for Qatar chooses to take materials and examples from the Malaysian context. And that's how we started being as a leader. Now, to ground you guys in terms of the challenges of teaching in low-income communities and changing their lives, I want to share a bit of some of the stats with you. But to do that, I'm going to ask all of you to stand up as part of this exercise. So a bit of kinesthetic learning happening today. Yes. Right. Now everyone's standing up a bit, get the blood flowing a bit, get the heart pumping instead of just sitting down. Now, I'm going to ask everyone from the gentleman in the suit there with the glasses to your left, anyone behind you and to your left to sit down, please. Alright? And the whole row is behind as well. So this is, all of you guys can sit down. No, the three rows on this end stand up. Okay, instructions are not so clear as a teacher. So, yeah, Sunday morning, a bit tricky to get the students going. Okay, so if this whole class was the population of Malaysia, 1/4 of you, by the time you reach standard 1, 1/8 of you, by the time you reach standard 1, would not be literate. Okay, 1/8. I'm going to ask everyone from you, Miss Vivian, to sit down. Everyone behind this line here. The rest of you guys sit down. Okay, sorry, you guys as well. So by the time standard 4 comes around, 1/4 of the Malaysian population does not meet numeracy rates. And standard 4 numeracy rates means identifying a 4-digit number up to 9,999. Current stats. Okay? Now fast forward a bit more, and everyone from the gentleman in the jacket, black jacket, sits down from that row. So all of you guys as well. And you guys too. Right? 20% of a cohort only makes it to university. Only 20%. That means for every one of you sitting here, you have 4 friends or colleagues that did not make it to university. If it's not colleagues, it's other Malaysians. Alright? Just want to hammer home, like, this is the stats that we're having right now. And the rest of you, thank you very much. In that sense. So, this is the challenge of education inequity. The fact is, a child's background often determines his outcome in life. Now, given the scale of the problem on a global level, Teach Malaysia is part of a network of 32 partners that is building an alumni movement to create this change happen. So yes, you do teach for 2 years in underprivileged schools such as Pulau Ketam or even SMK Segambut, which is 5 minutes away from Mont Kiara. But as an alumni, you can choose to make an impact in the country or in countries such as Qatar, Bangladesh, Nepal, and hopefully one day Sri Lanka as well, and Myanmar, because we're 2 colleagues here are thinking about starting up a program there as well. So the potential for Malaysians to make an impact is within our grasp, and I'll just leave you with that note.
Thank you, Zamir and Dr. Jamila. The next question will be for Dr. Jamila. We often see the media highlighting philanthropists like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, even Angelina Jolie as faces of their many charitable causes. And there seems to be an impression coming from the West especially that to give back, you have to be rich yourself. You have to be a billionaire. You have to have loads of money. So how do you think we can debunk this idea and make charity a more inclusive act? And how do we instill this idea that anyone can make a difference?
This is on TV, right? Be very careful that Bill Gates will see it and not want to talk to me anymore. But, or Angelina Jolie. Well, listen, this whole concept of philanthropy and charity, it's offensive to me. I think that, I would like to see a world where we no longer talk in terms of charity. Because what we need to do is completely shift it to one where it's a rights-based approach, that everyone actually has a right to life with dignity. And in everything we do, there must be a lens that we look at everything as a shared value. So whether you are a business person, for you to become successful in your business, it also means that your community is also going to improve. So eventually, we will then do away with, this whole concept of philanthropy. I'm not saying that it's not important. I think it is, but it should be targeted and minimalized, really to very specific groups. Now, the whole thing, whether it's a Western precept. Let me talk from the humanitarian perspective, because I have the data from that. In the overseas development assistance, this is what OECD disaster. The OECD countries, right? Which is Europe and developed countries. So they have managed to actually track down how much of funding from these countries as donors go to humanitarian development assistance. So it's in the region of 14 million, something like that. Okay. Anyway, so they become very proud that, you know, Western countries are big donors. Lo and behold, they tried to look at how much money is given through zakat and wakaf for the same period of time. It was 1 trillion. Do people talk about it? Do people recognize that there is actually a whole world out there that's actually giving money that doesn't say, we big donors, without us, you people are going to starve in Africa? No. Why? Because it's a cultural concept. Alright? And also because maybe, this is my view, many of the countries in the developing world don't know how to behave as donors in the Western paradigm, because they look at this as a very much, you know, a responsibility and its culture and so forth. So I think that, you know, this whole Western concept is actually completely going to be debunked, again from a humanitarian development perspective, because there are now countries who will say to Western donors, I don't want your money. In Sudan, when all the international organizations were thrown out, the only few organizations that will say, you can stay, was Mercy Malaysia. So I was still in Mercy Malaysia then, as you know, I retired, and I went around to talk to international organizations and donors to say, we are still working. We are still in Fashar, we are still in Geneva, we can deliver services. No money was given from international big donors because, you know what? It was all about politics. It wasn't about humanitarian assistance. So I hope that philanthropy as a Western precept will be completely thrown out of the window. I hope that we will all start to look at people having enough power and enough skills, no matter how low their level of education is, to actually come out and find solutions for their own problems. I think that will be the biggest development step we will make in the future. When we start thinking about people not as victims, but actually as people who will find solutions. I like Zamir's, I'm going to steal your quotation, because I want to use it all the time now, because so clever. Problems are universal. Solutions are shareable. And I think here is where this whole role that Malaysia and the developing world has a role to play in actually sharing our solutions. I mean, when I talk to my friends in Ghana, you know, the best thing that you hear is that we gained independence the same year, and we've gone leaps and bounds in terms of our development indices, our economic indices, and so forth. And even, you know, health, even maternal health, and so forth. I don't know whether you've been reading, Malaysia has the 3rd best healthcare in the world. So I think that, you know, so this whole concept of philanthropy is one small element. The most important thing is actually policies and people who will then drive change within even the most difficult circumstances.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jamila. Now, staying on this line of where anyone can make a difference and Malaysians must play a role in the international arena, my question for Zamir is that TFM seems to epitomize this idea that you don't need to be a billionaire to give back. I mean, youths from these various backgrounds, various educational backgrounds come back to Malaysia and teach children from underprivileged communities in schools. And isn't this what we look for in our youth? You know, a desire to improve their communities no matter what their background. So Zamir, how do you see Malaysia moving forward in shaping individuals with these noble desires to give back to the community?
A few questions there, all in one. I think Teach Malaysia is very privileged that we seem to be leading this push on giving back at an early stage. I really want to thank our comms team and a lot of the people that we got on board because they're so socially connected on media. But Teach Malaysia did not invent giving back. There was a lot of other organizations that were around before us that were encouraging youth to do it, but we just seem to be making a bigger noise about it thankfully that noise has resulted in about 169 people to join the fellowship. Can anyone guess whether there's more local graduates or foreign graduates? So put your hands up if you think there's more local graduates that teach from Malaysia. Okay, that's white, hands up right now. So yeah, what about those that think there's more foreign graduates? Hands up. Okay, great. Those that didn't put your hands up was actually correct because it's actually half. Right, you have insider information. So there's actually a half of this. And sorry, what was your question again?
How do you see Malaysia moving forward in shaping individuals with the desire to give back to the communities?
Okay, I think Malaysia has been trying to do this, but the challenge has always been the individuals making that choice themselves. And your question implies that there's someone else needs to be responsible for you to take action, and I don't think that's a very youth type of question. I mean, we're kind of like giving our authority, autonomy to this cloud called Malaysia to prepare us to be engaged in civil service or society. But what's stopping us from just doing it now? And as youth, I'll tell you what's stopping the youth, so I'm changing your question around a bit. What's stopping youth mostly from joining Teach Malaysia? The first thing is always their parents. Okay? Parents would say, oh my gosh, I sent you to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. Why do you want to be a teacher? I mean, we have even Ken Ming here. Please stand up, Ken Ming. Wave to the crowd. So, Ken Ming is actually a 2012 alumni, and he did Teach Malaysia. After working in the corporate world for about 2 years, his dad as well did not like it at all. But he managed to convince his dad, and in the 2 years there was a huge transformation in his family. Grab him afterwards to find out. But parents always tends to be the biggest barrier. Some participants can say, Dad, I'm 22, 23 years old, I need to make a choice now. And some would still have to go because we have a lot of respect for our parents. So how do we communicate and influence our parents is the first step. Next step is then worried about ourselves, which is very true. I cannot give so much to the kids. What about my career? Eventually I want to buy a house, I want to buy a car, I need to send my kids to school, and I'm also thinking about sending my kids to the private school as well, right? How am I going to afford private education? Because the education system is so spoiled, and I don't want to send my kids there. But then at the same time, I don't want to go and fix it. So yeah. So this is something that's really expected, and Teach Malaysia says like, you're fine, do Teach Malaysia for 2 years only. You have a career that's coming afterwards. You're fully paid by the Ministry of Education, and afterwards you can jump into companies. Shell is one of them, PwC, CMB, all recognize Teach Malaysia's 2-year commitment. And they would actually say, okay, your 2 years of service, you actually get a bump in the salary as well after the 2 years. So you're not actually taking a step back. The step forward that you're taking is that in your first 2 years of working with Teach Malaysia, not only are you making a difference in the system and in the kids' lives, you're making a difference in yourself, because you're leading 150 students that never believed in themselves to change their mindset. I guarantee you, you would not get to lead 150 engineers, bankers, or consultants, or auditors in any of the 3 companies until you're about like 10 years into the business. So think about that. And in the end, every adult was once a kid, and if you can understand kids in the classroom, you'll understand adults later on. So that's barrier number 2. Barrier number 3 individuals have is that it's someone else's problem. It's someone else's problem, someone else can do it. Why do I have to do it? And I'll leave it at that.
I'm going to challenge on it. Just to add on, I think one of the biggest problems in Malaysia is we don't have the evidence and the data. I think there's many more young people who are actually doing good things than we actually know. And contribution to society could be organized contribution or less organized. So it's not through societies and like Teach Malaysia or Mercy Malaysia and things like that. But the problem is we don't have the evidence. The other thing is we don't have incentives. We don't have incentives. I mean, Teach for Malaysia has strong incentives in that the link to the private sector is quite strong, it will be stronger, and the link to JPA and the government is very healthy. And the fact that, Teach for Malaysia's inputs are taken very seriously by the Ministry of Education and also in the education blueprint and so forth. But, if you look at even in the UK, to get into some of the top universities, they actually look at what you've been doing as a young person in terms of your contribution to society and so forth. And I'm not sure, even I did a little bit of both, UK education and Malaysian education. So I don't remember in Malaysian education that they really asked me what I did in terms of my extracurricular and stuff. In the UK, yes, But say in Australia, they have data was 1 in every 5 people are actively engaged in an organized, voluntary sort of, contribution. And then in every household, there are people who are volunteering for something. So we don't have that, and we don't have the incentives. And I think that if we really want to transform Malaysia, we talk about economic transformation, we haven't really seriously looked at the societal transformation in terms of the incentives for people actually to learn about communities around them, or outside their country and so forth, and make a change. I think that has to happen. And I think Teach for Malaysia certainly provides that avenue. And if I was you guys, I'd be waiting to apply for Teach for Malaysia. It's not advertising, but even though I'm the chair now, but it's really true because we get many applicants, but in the end we only have not even 100 fellows because it's very strict. We choose people who will be leaders. It's about leadership development. So I think that we need to now find ways that our system in the government, in the private sector, encourages and rewards such participation. I remember in Malaysia, one example, Petronas had something called Petronas Volunteer Opportunity Program linked to the Human Resource Department. And therefore people could actually take time out, paid salary by Petronas to do voluntary work with us. Because we needed people who were project managers, who were finance people, legal officers and so forth. And the observation is that everyone who actually went on mission with us went right up the career ladder very fast because this is about demonstrable leadership. So that was a real strong incentive from Petronas. And JPA actually allows people to go on mission with Malaysia with paid leave. It's unrecorded leave now, means you can, that doesn't deduct leave. So I think those incentives we need to develop.
Thank you, Tan Sri Dr. Jamila. My next question is for you also. Now, Mercy's prominence as a global relief effort organization is very impressive, especially seeing how the international medical relief arena has been dominated by Western organizations such as the Red Cross and also Doctors Without Borders for a very long time. So, what made the rise of Mercy possible, and what inspired you to lend a hand to the international community?
Okay, first of all, the inspiration. The inspiration was I felt Malaysia was a leader. And I felt that it was a time in 1999, you all know the political scenario in 1998, 1999, where I felt Malaysians were no longer being able to look, we have problems in Malaysia, let's face it, we do have problems. But we also have a lot of potential and a lot of things that are good. And a lot of things that are good are actually our people. I have a lot of faith in Malaysians. And I wanted to find a way that Malaysians would come together to do it. All I wanted to do was build a platform that Malaysians and doctors like myself could actually go out and do, contribute to issues. Of course, it started and was modeled on Medicine Sans Frontières. At the time when I wanted to start this, I don't know whether any of you saw the video that is on your Facebook, but I wrote to every organization in Malaysia saying I want to go to Kosovo, I'll pay, I want to stay there 6 months, I want to work in a war zone. Nobody replied. They all probably thought I was mad. Okay? So, and then I wrote to Medicine Sans Frontières and they replied immediately to say, we'll do a phone interview, we'll set you up. So of course my husband looked at me and I said, why is it so difficult for Malaysians to realize this is so important? And he said, look, if you join Medicine Sans Frontier, you'll just be just one Malaysian in a Western organization. But if you start something, you build a platform that all Malaysians can come together and do good. So I always joke that I'm a very obedient Muslim wife. My husband tells me to start an organization, I start. and when people turn around to him, how come you allow her to go to war zones? And he says, ladies first, ladies first. So that's the answer. But seriously, it was actually building that platform. So it was never been about me. It was about trying to build something that would catalyze professionals to actually think about their role in this. And of course, it has been an extreme catalyst. Now, why did it succeed? Because very early on, I realized the MSF model is not the model I want to emulate. I did not see it building capacity. I did not see it as a model that really looks. It's a powerful organization, extremely powerful. It's got billions in the budget. In some countries, they are the de facto health ministry, right? But when they leave, systems collapse. So we completely changed the way we approach it to very much community-driven, talking to people, and then about building capacity. And I think that's where we became very unique. So in 2003, 2004, I started saying to the team, guys, we've got to change our approach. It has to be about total disaster risk management. It has to be about looking at the whole spectrum from prevention, response, relief, recovery. How do you strengthen health systems? How do you build stronger hospitals, this kind of stuff. People thought I was mad then. People thought that, oh God, she can't focus. Nobody thought it was vision, right? So, but of course, 10 years later, alhamdulillah, this is what people are talking about now, that this is how we need to behave. We are 10 years ahead. So now we can advise international organizations. It's not the way to do things. The way to do things is actually very much grounded on people-centric approaches. And thankfully this year, Prime Minister, last year, but this year, I can't remember now, recognized Mercy Malaysia as the winner of the Innovation Award. So, the innovation was actually looking at things from very much a people perspective. And to be humble enough to recognize you are not going there to save the world. You're in there to make a small difference, but inspiring local communities and local actors to actually take charge of how they recover and rebuild their own resilience and their strength and capacity. So I think, it's a completely different paradigm of humanitarian assistance that is, for a long time, people thought I was quite radical and quite crazy, and I think, but I think it paid off. I think it's good to be radical and quite crazy, but, it also drives home the message that whether you're in business, whether you're in education, whether you're in humanitarian assistance, whether you're in medicine, you need to put yourself in your client's shoes. I used to teach in medical school, and I'm an obstetrician and gynecologist. How many medical students are in this room? It's terrible, this medical students. They don't come. So I used to teach obstetrics and gynecology, right? And my students used to be really terrified if I did this, and I would actually do it. When I found one kind of arrogant medical student, the type who wears this white coat and hangs the stethoscope around the neck like that, right? And jalan one kind, yeah? So I will actually go to the neighbor ward and say, come. And how do you think it feels like to be a patient? And I always tell them, you're going to deliver babies and this kind of stuff. And one thing I used to do was I used to make them lie on the bed and put their legs up in the stirrups. With clothes on lah. Okay? Just for 3 seconds. And then I told them to come down and I said, how did you feel? And they said, very exposed and very vulnerable. And I said, well, every time you're with a patient, that is either your mother, your sister, your best friend. You must make sure that you internalize that. And to be a good doctor is not just to have all your string of postgraduate degrees, but to really be able to have the compassion and the sincerity to treat the patient and giving the best care that you can. And I think if you have that approach in anything you do, whether it's business or engineering, and things like that, or being the best teacher that you can, because that is your child, right? I think that I think is what drives me and the many hundreds and thousands of volunteers. But remember this: if people say, "Oh, it's about leadership," or that, you're not a leader till you actually have followers. You can think you're the greatest leader in the world and you have the best ideas, but if nobody believes you or follows you, you're nothing. So actually, I saw this YouTube video or TED Talk that leadership is actually about the first person who believes you and wants to come with you. That's the leader, because that person allowed you to then drive your vision, and your aspirations.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jamila. What they say is the crazy ones who change the world. So, yeah. Well, I think it's time for me. That was really slow. Well, okay. I think now it's time for me to open the floor to the Q&A session. And before I open the floor, a few ground rules for the Q&A session. Before you ask your question, please state your name and your university. And please keep your questions short and simple. I don't want to hear a long story of your life. So, okay, those with questions, please line up on the mic stands on the left and the right of the hall.
I expect people to be running to the microphone. Come on, guys.
Okay, I'll take the lady on my right. Name and university, please.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Natra from University of Bath. My question is directed to Tan Sri Jamila. I would like to ask your opinion about students joining, say, a UK-based organization to volunteer in countries like Africa in terms of their education and campaign against HIV and stuff. Because they're saying that this company actually, their help is not that, wasn't that helpful because it does not touch to the root of the problem, where when people go there, they say students spend a week there, help out, but then that's all. They didn't really touch the problem to the roots. And the other thing is about, it does not help in the sense that it makes people too dependent on foreign help. So what's your opinion about this? Like whether we should help or not?
Okay, I'll have the lady on my left.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Tan Sri and Mr. Zame. I have a question. There's always this question of inefficiency, especially in NGOs, such as internal politics, high overhead costs, and especially the question of transparency. So in order to start to get involved, how do we actually decide on which to choose, and what are the recommended characteristics of the bodies to the best platform to actually get involved in? Thank you.
I'll take one more. Are there any more questions from the floor? Okay. The gentleman on my right, name and university, please.
I'm not actually from university, but I graduated from Newcastle University, and I'm working for a company called Maxwell Engineering in Newcastle, in Darlington. I have a question for probably any one of you. I already live here for about 12 years, and if I would like to get involved with any Malaysian, Teach for Malaysia, or any kind of Malaysian activities, how do I do that? And probably this apply for other students or other graduates who already stay here for a long time. And just give your advice, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sapira. I'm studying in Newcastle, and what you said really interested me about young people having their incentive to learn about their environment, whether it's in Malaysia or in other places. So I'm wondering how you would respond when someone comes up to you asking for advice on voluntary work, and you give them all these options, and at the end of the conversation they come back to you and say, oh, actually around Easter I want to go on holiday, or in summer nak balik Malaysia lah, or just a bit too busy. So how would you respond to that? I mean, they want to volunteer, but at the end of the day, their kind of priorities doesn't really match their aim. So yeah, please.
Yep, got it. I also was in Newcastle at one time. Why I? Love it. Okay, there was a question. About, you asked a question about, going to Africa and addressing HIV/AIDS for a week and so forth, when you know that a lot of issues are very deeply rooted. I always tell people, and in the same philosophy I had in Malaysia, even if you want to volunteer with me for 2 days, I will take you in and I will embrace you as my volunteer and I will make sure you have a good experience, inshallah. Because sometimes you just need that experience to ignite something in that person, which might even be completely unrelated to your organization. The person might think, you know what, I'm really not good for this and this is not really good, and I think that it's better I, do something to teach Malaysia or something like that. But you allow that experiential, the experience. I think it's important. But on the other hand, you cannot go in with, the ideology or the idea that you're going to go in for 2 weeks and solve a problem. You can't. But maybe that allows you an opportunity to contribute to ideas on solving the problem. I think that's really important. So the choice of organization is very important, which comes to the next question about transparency and so forth. Now, I don't know if you've been following, I used to be on the board of Save the Children in the UK, and I also sit on several boards in the UK and ODI Council. There has been an uproar about salaries of some of the NGOs here who are paid something like £250,000 a year as CEO. Okay, so on one hand, I think if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. I'm probably the biggest monkey of all because for 10 years I did not receive salary, but that was a choice. But I think now people are realizing that professionalism is extremely important in organizations. If you really want to have a good organization, then you need to be very professional about it, and professionalism does cost. So there is cost. To say that good organizations has low overheads is actually a bit, it's very simplistic. And I think that as long as you can be transparent on how you actually spend that money, and and defend on how you spend it, then it becomes important. But of course, on the other hand, overpaying and lack of accountability is very important. So in the humanitarian development sector, there are many ways that you can actually control this in some way. For example, again, I have to go back to Malaysia because that's the organization that I know more intimately. When we started in 1999, nobody wanted to guide us. So it was all about learning, make mistake, learn, and ask, observe, and things like that. But very early on, I decided that we need to benchmark ourselves to an international standard. So just as in business you have ISO, in the humanitarian sector you have something called Humanitarian Accountability Partnership certification. And it's a very tedious process. But I guess I was quite innovative because I realized with all certification, you require very good systems and processes. And doctors are not the best people when it comes to systems and processes. So what do? We went to Pricewaterhouse, we went to Accenture, we went to Hay Group, we went to Khazanah, and we said, and I went to them saying, I don't want your money. And of course, when you say to all these donors that you don't want their money, they listen to you, right? And I said, I don't want your money, but I want your expertise. And then Pricewaterhouse really got the ball rolling for us and gave us a team of, I think, about 5 or 6 people to work with us in setting up our standard operating procedures, processes, systems, and so forth. And then, Accenture helped us with IT. We had Hay Group to look at human resource and strategies, and of course, all that came together, and Mercy Malaysia became the first Asian organization and the 3rd organization in the world to be certified in 2007. Now, what does that mean? That means that you can be assured of accountability, not just in terms of financial accountability and so forth, but more importantly, and this is where people don't understand accountability, is accountability to the people you serve. Now, in many organizations, and I know I'm going to get in trouble, but this is live stream, they go around and they, not in Malaysia, okay, so easier not in Malaysia. So, they go around and they go and send drives, they go and send, whatever, sardines, mattresses, whatever, and not realizing this is actually not what these people want. I remember in Afghanistan, we had Elle Macpherson lingerie in the warehouses of Afghanistan, which I was very tempted to take, right? Because these people will never wear. And similarly, in some parts of the world where they send Maggie mee when you don't have clean water and they have no idea how to eat the Maggie mee. So you see children, opening this plastic and eating raw Maggie mee. And then, post tsunami in Aceh, everybody is sending canned sardines. And in Sri Lanka, when people don't eat sardines. So, where is your accountability to affected populations? They are not victims. They have the right to be treated with more dignity. So find organizations that dare to say that they are open and transparent in how they manage their finances, that they have bothered to do something that will demonstrate that accountability and so forth. Do not be afraid to challenge and to ask. And if any organization tries to hide anything from you, walk away. There are thousands of organizations you can volunteer or work with. Okay? Now, there was another question that was quite related about, what do you do when somebody tells you, I want to advise which voluntary organization to go with, and then the next thing you know, they want to go shopping or whatever it is, right? So, look, it's sexy, right, to tell people, you know what, I heard this term in the UK, among doctors again. I've done an MSF. With that face up. Okay? I've done an MSF. Like it's though like big stamp here, you've done an MSF. So the guys actually get girls when they tell them I've done an MSF. You become real sexy, right? They're like heroes. Now, it's true, okay? I'm not joking, I've heard it in my own ears. And so the reality is, people are motivated to do things for very different reasons. And therefore they may ask you, maybe to impress you, that, I'm really interested in volunteerism. So, I'm kind of, I have a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde personality, yeah? Usually I'm the Jekyll first, Dr. Jekyll. I say, yeah, very good. So after a while, when they bother me and over once, twice, three times, I tell, hey, can you please go and talk to somebody else, or don't bother me or whatever it is. I will, because I think it's not worth my time, right? So be the Dr. Jekyll for a little while, listen and things like that. After once, twice, you'll say to them, you've asked me this 3 times, and yet you've never really committed. Are you serious, or are you trying to impress me? Usually they shut up. Okay?
Thank you very much, Dr. Jamila. I think the next question was, there was one for Zamir, how to decide on which organization to volunteer with.
Yeah, I actually want to jump on a few other questions as well. I think Dr. Jim touched on the point about which organization to volunteer with. Dr. Jim, you talked about from a cost perspective, from an impact perspective. I want to add a third element as well when you choose what to volunteer with. Ask yourself, know yourself as well. Who are you? What are the values? What are the impact that you want to create yourself? And from there, it'd be a lot easier to volunteer in that perspective. I think use those 3 factors when you're choosing an organization to volunteer with. To the question again about how to help teach Malaysia even though you're here, that's a really great question. Who asked it just now? Like the gentleman over there. Thank you very much. There's so many ways, right, to help out teach from Malaysia. A lot of our fellows teach in some of underprivileged schools, and one fellow that actually graduated from law from I can't remember which university again, UK university. He got his fellow classmates to send postcards to his school, and with that postcards, he has a whole lesson around postcards and around showing kids what is it like to grow up to go to university in Manchester, in Sheffield, in London, in Cambridge, in Warwick, in Bath, and kids that we serve do not have access to the simple life opportunities. Even a picture changes their view in life. Somebody says like, and then especially when the teacher says like, you can go to this university if you work hard. Holding kids to high expectations, it's a very scary thing to do as a teacher. Again, Ken Mick can tell you a lot more about it. But once you hold the kid to that high expectations, they actually go. So connecting with fellows while you're here, through so many ways you can help out. More importantly, you can help out the organization by helping source for potential fellows. So you can sign up as a campus leader, or in your case, because you've been working, probably we'll call you a senior campus leader. And then you can help out run activities and events in the UK to raise awareness about Teach for Malaysia. Ken Ming and myself has been here for 1 week now. We've been to Cambridge, Imperial, Sheffield and Manchester. Everyone we met at first said like, oh, I've heard about Teach Malaysia, but I brushed it aside because it was an NGO. I've heard about Teach Malaysia, but I brushed it aside because you guys haven't created an impact. You guys have been around for how long now? Like 5-10 years? I said, no, only 3. Oh, and they say, oh. But when they hear Teach Malaysia, they think the impact that we're creating is around changing the syllabus, changing the language that's being taught at. That's actually a misconception. Teach Malaysia is here to get the best talent to tackle a problem. So we're just a talent pipeline. And in that 2 years, you understand the problem about education inequity a lot more. And as alumni, you then feel like if syllabus is something that needs to change, then go ahead, work with the ministry and change it. If you then think actually Orang Asli schools are really important, then you work with the Jabatan Kebajikan Jakwa for Orang Asli, or you work with the Ministry of Education to give Orang Asli the education education that they need. But you're part of a network that makes that happen. So that's what Teach Malaysia does. We're a talent pipeline. But what's missing is that understanding is so difficult to communicate out. And I think one of the biggest challenges as an engineer, I don't understand communication that well as well. So need help from a lot of campus leaders. I want to touch on very quickly. I want to touch on very quickly about the question from you, Miss, about the people who ask like, can I help out, etc., and then they don't commit. Most of the time, I try to find out why they don't do it, because it's up to us to go the extra mile to recruit people. Because companies like PwC, Shell, Accenture, etc., recruit so heavily for all the graduates in this room right now. But no one is recruiting for the kids. So if someone shows one slight hint of like possibility, zoom, we're there. They might say no, etc. But we've had cases where we've spoken to people 5 times over the phone for half an hour before they actually said, I'm going to commit and become a Teach Malaysia fellow. So you might come across someone that's trying to impress you, but you might also come across someone that's really afraid to make that move for some reason. And you've got to find out why. And it's up to you as a leader to make that happen.
I was going to add, because you are already working and in Newcastle, you might want to also consider organizations in the country as well to volunteer for. And the other thing, of course, is fundraising. I mean, this is really, really important. I mean, organizations don't just run on love and fresh air. It's really about money and resources. And also, even if it's not that, there's also expertise, technical expertise that's required. So I think, there are many ways that you can do it. I'm going to embarrass Dato' Faiz because he just walked into the room. We talked so much about Pricewaterhouse this morning as partners to us both, whether it's Mercy Malaysia or Teach for Malaysia. And I think, it's a very sincere thanks, because it's about corporations recognizing that then, one of the things I will never forget was your predecessor, Dr. Johan, who came to me and said, our staff raised money for this and they want to go down and help people in Johor, the flooding and things like that. And I looked at him and said, but they're accountants now. Why should I waste the time of your accountants and all that to go and distribute food or whatever? You will feel good, but you're not creating the impact that I need to actually do my job well. I need your expertise. I need your advisory work. I need the brains in the organization to help me think about setting up systems, risk management frameworks and things like that. So, and it was so nice to hear, not just Dr. Johan Raslan, but everybody in the organization, including Faiz, including, Faifa, everybody, Sweet Farm, that coming to say, really believe in what you're doing, and we will try to make it, sort of a corporate kind of, responsibility to actually help you achieve your goal, not just by giving money, but also by giving expertise. And I think that's so important. And I think many corporations now, I'm very critical about corporate responsibility because I think a lot of it is whitewash. Oh dear, we're on TV, aren't we? Okay, sorry, but it's about really, for corporations, we want corporations to make money, but we want corporations to impact the lives of others in doing so. So, this is why I keep going on about the whole concept of shared value. I think it's really, really important. And I hope that you who have been living here for 12 years, you are, the fact that you're still connected to wanting to help Malaysia is so important to us. And that, stay in touch and give us your ideas, what you observe within your communities here. There are things you learn that we might learn from. And how do we learn from each other? What you observe in your community and how they actually handle, children with special needs or whatever, because that's a real major area now in Malaysia. So, help us to better understand as well what might work in different contexts that we might be able to adapt.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jamila. Okay, we are running a bit tight of time, but I will take 2 more questions. Make your way to the microphones if you have any questions. Okay, the lady on my left.
Hi, my name is Karina from Cardiff University. I'm just going to rephrase what she asked previously that you guys didn't really answer. The fact that how much do you think that you should help a country itself before they can actually stand for themselves? Because of the ideology of we shouldn't help too much, then they will be dependent on us. Yeah, I'm really interested to know. Thank you.
Okay, the lady on my right. Assalamualaikum. I'm Shazmin. I'm studying Bachelor of Music and Fine Arts from the University of Kent, and I've got this. I've always been wondering about this view on the creative arts industry. What are your views on the importance of the creative arts industry in helping our citizens to reach the globalization standard, or the creative arts industry is merely entertainment to you guys? And are we not as important? Please comment. Thank you.
Can I take that one? I don't know about you guys, when I was in school, we have a life card, and you have to write the ambitions every year. My ambition was to be a concert pianist and a singer. So we can karaoke later. So I think that fine arts is really important. I will give you why I think fine arts is so underrated in many humanitarian development. Fine arts and creativity can build peace. It's the one mechanism that you can actually cross every boundary and get young people to sing and dance and act or whatever together. And this has worked. It has been proven to work time and again in Bosnia, in Kosovo, in many, many countries. So come and talk to me, because I would love to talk to you about it in Lilian as well, And the question that sorry I didn't answer it, this age. Okay, dependency is the first thing you must avoid. And this is where I'm saying that if you look at it from a community perspective and really asking them what they want, most of them will tell you, I don't want aid. I want to be able to do this myself. Now, if you look at humanitarian development assistance now, people are doing away with giving things. People are now just putting money into accounts because they will know what to do. They know where their priorities are. So I remember after Cyclone Nargis in Myanmar, and we went down, and I was grilled by the media in BBC and all those people, because I said, actually they don't need you. Wow, Mara, I tell you, because you know why? The international organizations couldn't go down to the Delta, right? And I said, what I saw was women and men picking wood and all that, whatever debris, and trying to rebuild their houses. What they need now is some little assistance, whether it's money or material, for them to rebuild their lives. So dependency, if you approach problems from a perspective of what does that person want, do you think people affected by poverty and crisis really want your aid? It's really, they have dignity. I remember giving, I won't tell you which organization in the UK, gave me money for tsunami and said, go and build some houses in Aceh. And at the end of it, the guy says to me, make sure you put logo big one on the house. So I looked at him and I said, how do you like to go home to be reminded that your house is given by somebody? If you put a logo on your house first, then I do. If you don't want, I give you back your money. Well, of course they panic, because donors, when they give you money, you won't give them back. They really panic, they don't know how to juggle the books. You have to push back and tell them no. So how do you change the mindset of people who want to volunteer and help, that you are not giving them aid, you are trying to help them find their feet so they find the solutions. So if you take that lens, there will never be a dependency issue coming out. And that's really important. That's a very good question.
Yeah, I think the first question is a lot easier as well. Fine arts, creative arts. I think it's both. I don't like an or question. I like an and all the time. It's both entertaining and really critical to development as well. Personally, I don't understand much about the arts. I'm tone deaf. I don't have any rhythm. I'm an engineer, right? And I think the reason why Malaysia doesn't have enough of this being pushed up is because we don't have enough leaders advocating for it enough, especially in our education system. So come and join us as an alumni and then make that bigger change happen. Going back to the question about dependency as well, and Dr. Jim talked about it from a humanitarian perspective, it's the same in the classroom for one individual student. You're not there to teach maths or science, but you're really there to teach children. And teaching children involves developing their character strengths, affect, and involves opening up their imagination about what is possible, what can they be when they grow up, and access. So you get these two portions right, the academic component will take care of themselves. Because if suddenly a kid growing up and has been failing English his whole life is suddenly told by his teacher that if he wants to be a graphic designer, he needs to understand, first of all, pass SPM, because otherwise he's not going to get to a diploma or any degree. And on top of that, he needs to learn English so that he can make business. If he's only speaking Chinese or Mandarin or Hokkien, his business is really small. So if you learn English, your business opens up to a global perspective. And with that small little change, that kid who's been failing English even since standard 2, but now is at form 2, is able to pass PMR in just 1 year with a C+. Hopefully by the time he gets to SPM, he'll be an A as well. So the 2-year fellowship is not meant to be like you're going to be there, you're going to create a dependency with the child. You're supposed to create the child to be a lifelong learner in that sense. Now that's at school level, but if you continue, and that's an individual student, but if you continue as an alumni inside of the system or outside, how do you then start empowering teachers? Or how do you start empowering your staff members so that instead of giving out food at a flood situation, they use their brain power to think about bigger system and policy changes that's needed to unlock the potential of 420,000 teachers. Ladies and gentlemen, actually, we all might think like the education system is crap right now because the quality of teachers, but I'm going to debunk that myth. We've met a lot of passionate teachers, but they're just burnt out from a system that does not catalyze or does not inspire them to do great things. So, where are the leaders that's going to change that?
Okay, thank you very much to both our speakers today. Please give thanks to Dr. Jamila. For the very good questions. It was a very good discussion. Thank you. Yeah, that's our civil society session for today.
right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to inform you that we are now commencing the second session of our conference. In this session, we will be engaging in a discussion on entrepreneurship in Malaysia. For the much-awaited discussion, I would like to invite to the stage three distinguished guests. Datuk Sri Abdul Wahab Maskan, Group Chief Operating Officer of Sime Darby Berhad, Datuk Faiz Azmi, Chairman of PwC Malaysia, and Wan Firdaus Wan Fuad, co-founders of Ideas and Young Corporate Malaysians.
Our moderator for this session will be Evan Lum, a third-year undergraduate from the University of Oxford, who is currently pursuing politics, philosophy, and economics. Please welcome them to the stage.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Global Corporate Sessions on Entrepreneurship. So to set the scene, I'll just give a brief introduction to the session. A large proportion of countries around the globe regard entrepreneurship as one of the essential ingredients to attain significant recognition in the global market. Recently, Malaysia has followed suit as exhibited in the Budget 2014 proposal declared by the Prime Minister Najib, stating the intention of maintaining comprehensive focus on entrepreneurship. The proposed 50 million ringgit establishment of the MAGIC, the Malaysian Global Innovation and Creative Centre, which is entrusted with the task of nurturing entrepreneurs, looks hugely auspicious. And entrepreneurship is up-and-coming bit of Malaysian economy. And today we're here to discuss this session. With me today is Datuk Sri Wahab Maskan, the Group CEO of Sime Darby Berhad, Datuk Faiz Azmi, the Executive Chairman of PwC, and Wan Firdaus Wan Fuad, the founder of Young Corporate Malaysia and Ideas. To start, we will give time to each of the speakers to discuss their views on the session before moving to panel questions, and after that, we will open it to the floor. If you'd like to start, that's it.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and also a very good morning. So we got a very quiet student. Not warmed up yet. First of all, I must say thank you very much for allowing me to be here, and I was invited. So I said that I agree because, number one, I was once like you, a student in UK. Number two is that I have gone through the various, that's why they asked me to be the first speaker, because I belong to maybe the most senior of the gang here. And of course, number three is that